Hey, this is Augie, Augie's Locker Room. When you come to the store, you're going to see things that you've probably never seen before unless you've been to a museum. Great items that go back to the Rockney era to the present. Website, augieslockerroom.com. Visit us here or the website.
Tim Priester with Tim O'Malley outside Notre Dame Stadium. Jack Swarbrick just met with the media, thanked Brian Kelly for the 12 years that he was here, and said that the program is on solid footing now, which was not the case when the job went to Brian Kelly a few years ago. But he will not name an interim head coach. It will be handled collectively within the team as they move forward with a bowl game or a playoff. And it doesn't sound like he's in a hurry to complete the process of choosing a full-time replacement for Brian Kelly.
I think if there's two takeaways, that's number one. He's not looking for the quickest fix. It doesn't sound like signing day has anything to do with anything. He mentioned recruiting will be part of the process, but it's not trying to get ahead of losing recruits, which of course is, from an athletic director's point of view, and really logic is the way to go. You don't want to save one recruit for Notre Dame football in its future. I think the other point was that he called it a broken program when Brian Kelly got here. He used the words not broken. And now he mentioned that he believes they're firmly one of the top 4 teams in the nation. So it is a much different search. The bad news, I guess, for Notre Dame fans is you're not going to find out anytime soon. The good news is you will probably get the right coach, whoever that is, because he's actually going to do the vetting process, just like he did when it was a broken program.
Jack Swarbrick was asked, of course, about the process of Brian Kelly informing him whether Notre Dame was given an opportunity to counter. He found out from Brian Kelly last night that it wasn't a situation where it was going to be a negotiation. Brian Kelly told him that he has another opportunity that he and his family wanted to pursue. So, it was not a matter of, hey, Brian, we can up the ante a little bit. He said Brian Kelly had no specific requests as far as facilities and things that need to be upgraded. He said there was always constant communication about how the program could be improved, but it certainly sounds like Brian Kelly had made up his mind, and that was that.
Yeah, and it sounds like Jack Swarbrick only had very, very mild indications. He seemed to come up with a couple more as the press conference went along, that there might have been some accidental hints. He said Freudian slips by Kelly, but he also mentioned, I think, this is the best point, and we've talked about this a lot when we talked about the waning popularity of Brian Kelly while he wins more. 12 years is a long time at Notre Dame. That's what Jack Swarbrick noted. It really is. There will be a breath of fresh air, whether it's a better coach or not. That is what's going to happen. Change brings fresh air ever so briefly sometimes, but there is going to be a change here, and I feel like we need to speak to our constituents when we talk about, everybody was talking about Marcus Freeman obviously being a guy you could promote, the recruiting class stays intact. That can happen. It just isn't happening immediately. I mean, I thought so much of it is I had a shell story ready for being interim head coach, not head coach, but clearly this is the way to go about a coaching search for Notre Dame, not say, boy, my players and these 17-year-olds really like Marcus Freeman.
Right, and he gave a lot of credit to the players. He said the culture that's been built for Notre Dame football the last 12 years is a result of having the right players in here.
He said of them, not of Jack Swarbrick or Brian Kelly, which I thought was a great point to bring up, and that's what his message to the players was.
Yeah.
You are the culture.
Absolutely, and that's the right way to approach it. Interesting, we talked about the Freudian slip. He said that he recognized a restlessness was the word that he used with Brian Kelly, having been here 12 years. And again, as you said, he indicated that 12 years as the head coach at Notre Dame is a long time. So, I understand that people want some finality here. The last 24 hours has been pretty much a debate between Luke Fickell and Marcus Freeman. And I do think, because he even said, whether the decision is made tomorrow or down the road, however long that would be, I do think that the recruiting class, he will keep that in mind.
Sure,
I do think that the decision could be made in short order, but he is Jack Swarbrick, and he wants to conduct a thorough review of the candidates for the job.
And short order is not 10 a.m. the next day. He found out last night. Everyone found out last night. You have to have a press conference because you're Notre Dame football in position to go to the playoffs, or even if you're Notre Dame football and you're 8-4, you have to have a press conference acknowledging Brian Kelly, his contributions here, and what the next steps are, and the power of your program. But it is hiring a coach right after that is nearly impossible, and even having the list ready. I mean, look, They're not going for low-hanging fruit, right? Luke Fickell has a playoff game to play, probably. Marcus Freeman probably has a major bowl game to coach. And we will get into on our podcast when Brian Kelly mentioned the interim head coach will not be promoted. He did not mean a coach like Marcus Freeman. We'll get into that more on our podcast without getting into the weeds here. But I understand. I think people listening now should understand why in the world would he be naming a coach at 10 a.m. the next day? I mean, it was exciting to think about it, but it's just not a possibility.
No. That's it from Notre Dame Stadium. Of course, tune in to our Irish Illustrated Insider podcast for what will amount to a roundtable discussion of many of these topics as Notre Dame considers a replacement for Brian Kelly.